Recording in progress. Welcome
Recording in progress.
Yes. Well, welcome to History of LA Ska one-on-one sessions. I'm your host, Junor Francis, alongside our producer and my good friend, Eric Kohler. Now, this series celebrates and aims to preserve and promote the ska, rocksteady, and vintage reggae scene in Southern California and beyond through insightful conversations with legends and modern-day talent, including those behind the scenes. We want to thank all our friends who are working behind the scene. So whether you listen to this podcast series or watch us on YouTube, a big thank you for your support. Please remember to subscribe and tell a friend. Tell as many friends as you possibly can. And I think it's your obligation and your responsibility to tell as many people as you possibly can. On this episode, we welcome multi-instrumentalist, vocalist, composer, Gabrial McNair, most known for his work with No Doubt, Gwen Stefani, and Sublime, among other groups, too many to list. Welcome, Gabe.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you,
Talk to you, Gabe.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for making the time. Looking forward to talking with you. And I know we've been trying to get this going for some time, but I know you're a busy man as well. But looking forward to seeing you coming up at Cali Vibes Festival in just about a week and a half.
Yeah.
So Gabe, let's start with as a youth in Glendora, California. I think that's where you grew up. Did you ever dream that you would be playing in two of the most influential contemporary groups in the world, and No Doubt and Sublime with Rome?
Absolutely not. Yeah, that was I didn't see any of this coming. Yeah.
So your grandmother never told you the sky is the limit?
Well, they did, but I didn't know it was going to be this sky.
Right. The sky above you at the moment, right?
Exactly. Right. Yeah. It's been quite a journey. I'll say that much.
Indeed.
Yes. So what was life like growing up in Glendora? And give us a sense of the geography for the outer towners, outer staters.
Yes. Okay. So Glendora is
located. I think you complete my thought.
Yeah, it's a small suburb about 35, 40 minutes east of Los Angeles. And if anyone knows where Pasadena is, it's another 12 miles down the freeway, down the 210 freeway from Pasadena, along the foothills.
Right.
And yeah, it was an interesting place to grow up. I had a lot of fun there. I'd already discovered music, but I started playing music. That's when my musical career began, was in Glendora. I joined the school orchestra when I was 8 years old, 9 years old, fourth grade.
So elementary school orchestra. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, back then they had music in the schools. How about that?
Good old days.
What a concept.
That's how I got here, was from public school music
Amen.
programs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I played violin in the fourth grade, and then I switched to trombone in the fifth grade, and I just kept playing trombone. My older sister, or my youngest sister, who's older than me, I'm the youngest of 7 kids. She was in the high school drill team, which came along with the marching band. And I was like, I want to do that. And so, yeah, I kept playing music. And eventually when I got into high school, I joined the marching band. And then I became the drum major and did all that. And and then I learned how to play drums in high school too. And yeah, I taught myself how to play piano. Everything started there for me musically. Yeah.
So by the time you graduated high school, how many instruments did you play?
I was mainly playing piano and trombone, and then I had learned how to play drums. Yeah.
Okay. That's more than most people. And I suppose your parents supported you.
Yes, they did.
But encourage you to pursue music.
Well, no. Yes, they encouraged me to do whatever it was I wanted to do, but no one was telling me, hey, you need to go practice and go play your trombone or go do this or whatever. It was just like, like any other kid. They just kind of let me do whatever I wanted to do. And so I didn't start really getting serious about it and practicing until I was in high school. Later in high school is when I kind of got serious. I was just having fun, you know, like everyone else. At least I thought everyone else was having fun. But once I got serious about it, then yeah, they definitely encouraged me and said, if this is what you want to do, just go for it, you know.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right. So your first baptism into Jamaican music, ska, rocksteady, reggae, all three one. How did that come about?
You know, it's kind of interesting because I remember hearing reggae music in when I was probably 10 years old, somewhere around there.
Okay.
9 or 10 years old. My brother was in the military and he was stationed, I think he was stationed in Virginia or something like that. And he used to record radio. And there was a reggae radio station out there. I think it's Virginia or Raleigh or somewhere, because I noticed I was just there. When was that? Last year I was just there. I had a couple of days off. And I had a day off, couple of days off, and I went searching for restaurants, and I noticed there was a few Jamaican restaurants, like more than you would usually see in any major city.
Yeah.
And I think it was Virginia. But anyways, he recorded the radio, and it was either a reggae station or it was just their, you know, hour of reggae music that they would play or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember him bringing that home, and I remember listening to that cassette, and God, I don't know what I heard, but I thought it was interesting and I kind of liked it, but I didn't make any correlations yet. And then as I got through high school, you know, everyone knows who Bob Marley is, and so I learned about him, the Wailers. And it wasn't until, and then of course through growing up in Southern California, you know, our alternative radio station here, K-Rock, they were playing a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but they were playing some specific ska tunes. Two of them that really come to mind were Mirror in the Bathroom by the English Beat and One Step Beyond by Madness. I would hear those two songs quite often. And I always liked that sound. And I was already into the Police, and no one really thinks of them as a ska band, but they're definitely influenced by reggae music. And I've been a fan of the Police since I was even younger than that. So it all there was a lot of different points kind of bringing me into this universe. And then finally, I had a friend of mine in college. I was going to Citrus College in Glendora, and there was another trombone player there. And that's kind of a funny story I won't get into, but this guy's name was Brant. And we started talking one day, and he asked me about, you know, ska music and stuff, because he was a skinhead. And at the time, I didn't know the only reference I had to what that word meant was a Nazi skinhead, what we would know as a Nazi skinhead. And I was a little confused because we were chatting it up and he was super nice. And then I saw his girlfriend and she was black, and I was just like scratching my head going, wait, what? You know, and so anyways, we hung out a few times, and he actually introduced me to the early ska, because I had no idea it was going on before the 80s British stuff. I didn't know, like, he was like, are you familiar with Don Drummond? And I was like, no, I don't know who that is. And he was like, all right. And he went home and brought about 4 LPs over to me, and he goes, here, borrow these for a little bit. And I had a record player in my bedroom, and I put those on, and I was just like, I was like, this is nasty. Sure. And that was basically when I started getting into ska, heavily into ska. The problem was a lot of that music was hard to find. We had one big record store, Tower Records, that was in like West Covina, Covina Mall. And it was hard to find anything decent over there. At the time, for me at least. I would go looking for stuff, and you know, there was I I didn't have a lot of resources, nor did I know a lot of people. He was the only guy I knew who was like fully into ska. And then strangely enough, people in the area in the valley, San Gabriel Valley and in the San Fernando Valley, some people just somehow got my phone number and were calling me, hey, we got a band, we're looking for a trombone player. And funny enough, my friend that I was going to Citrus with, his name is Phil Jordan, he was playing in No Doubt, and I didn't know who they were. And he just came to me one day and he goes, oh, dude, he goes, I just had a meeting last night with this band, and they're called No Doubt. It's like a new band. They're called No Doubt, and they're signed to this new record label called Interscope Records.
So we're talking early 90s at this point.
Yeah, this is 92.
Yeah.
Right. And their record, I think, was about to come out, the first album. And he played it for me, and there's horns all over it. And I was like, man, this is great. Now, congratulations. And, and there was like a lot of other stuff other than just ska in there too.
Sure.
But anyways, yeah, I right after, and then I wound up having a meeting with them some months later. And then, word got around that, that I was in existence. And so there were other bands that were contacting me that they wanted me to play in their band and stuff. So, it was just a matter of time where people were like, hey, we got a trombone player amongst us, another one.
We're missing some important ingredients. I mean, how would people know you're good if you haven't played anywhere? So were you playing prior to?
Yeah, were you playing around town?
I wasn't like some of my musician friends and I, we sit around and talk, and they're like, so, what was the first band you played in? And I just kind of look down and I just go, No Doubt. And they're like, what? Come on.
You either win big or lose big, all right? I mean, that's a testament clearly to your playing skills. So when did you move on to Cal Arts?
So I spent about 4 years at Citrus College.
Sure.
That was the place where I really cut my teeth. That was like the head teacher there, Bob Slack. He was a trumpet player, but he taught me how to blow through the trombone and showed me techniques. And like, I spent a lot of time studying with him, and he was probably the most influential teacher I've had as far as like work ethic and, brass playing and all that kind of stuff. So I played in that big band, for about 4 years. And we had recording experience and we did all this other stuff. So I was there until 1993, early 94. That's when I switched over. Halfway through the year, I switched over to Cal Arts in January of 94.
So you were attending Cal Arts while you were in No Doubt.
Correct. I was actually going to Citrus College when I was playing with No Doubt. And then, I transferred over to Cal Arts, and I continued playing there. And then after being there for like a year and a half, Tragic Kingdom was finally done. And I had recorded on that. And I recorded also, the first things I recorded on were, because at the time we were making a lot of demos for Interscope. They were kind of hard on the band. They didn't understand the genre of music because they didn't know what the hell we were doing. And so for them to like try to hone in what the sound was, they didn't even know what they were doing. Like, they're hearing like 90s gangster rap, right, and they're hearing Seattle grunge, and then there's like some pop stuff that's going on too. And that band didn't fit in with any of that. So they were kind of,
no, that's true,
a little bit out of the water. Like, I don't know what to do with this band, And so I think I was told there were about 60 some odd songs submitted for that album. And so, and I played on a handful of the demos, and some of them got, pressed onto like, 45, and then eventually became the Beacon Street collection. Right. And so, we yeah, well, there was a lot of music submitted to Interscope, you know. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you before we move on though about Don Drummond. His name came up earlier. Did he have any influence?
Absolutely. He does, but you know, okay, this is another story. Because I'd heard about someone told me that Don Drummond, even J.J. Johnson, who was at the time my favorite jazz trombonist, and someone had told me that J.J. Johnson even knew who he was. And I got to meet J.J. in 96 or 7 at the Grammys. Unfortunately, we didn't have smartphones back then. Otherwise, I would have snapped a photo with him. But you know, he was a very nice gentleman. And I asked him about Don Drummond, and he didn't seem to remember. But you know, who knows? I mean, you know, you get to a certain age, and someone drops a name that you haven't heard in a long time. Maybe he might have. If I told him, or if I showed him, he might have been like, "Oh yeah," you know. But anyways, yeah, Don Drummond, like, wow, you know. Great player, great sound, and definitely him and Rico.
Yeah.
Rico, for me, Rico Rodriguez, he was a bigger influence. And the funny thing about Rico, so at the time when I was studying the trombone, oh, there he is right there.
we had the pleasure of working with Rico.
And
Don
is his teacher.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. They both went to
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Both have from
yes.
school, right?
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That makes total sense. So interesting thing about Rico, because he's Cuban, right? I mean, no, he probably culturally is Jamaican, but
yeah,
like,
his parents brought him to Jamaica when he was a little boy.
Yeah. So, okay. When I first, because one of the LPs that my friend had given me, this trombone player Brant, it was the More Specials. And I had put it on, but I was so engulfed in jazz music at the time, I didn't really. I think the ska, the love of ska was growing, but it wasn't like a bam kind of thing,
right?
You know, especially the old school stuff. And funny thing about Rico is when I first heard him. Now, mind you, the trombone playing that I was into at the time was the tone that you used, that I was trying to use, was a prettier tone. It was lighter. There was this trombone player, his name is Bill Watrous, and he's got a very smooth tone. Even J.J. Johnson has a very smooth tone. And even when I heard Don Drummond, he's also got a bit of that sound too. But when I heard Rico, I was like, it sounds too raspy. It's too, I don't know who this guy is, but I'm not into it. And it took me, and I didn't listen to it a lot, but I'll never forget. I remember the moment exactly where we were. I was riding in the back of the van, and we were No Doubt was on our way to Las Vegas. We were playing, I believe we were going to play at a place called the Huntridge Theater. I don't even know if it's still there anymore. And I believe we were going to play with Sublime and The Offspring and some other bands. Mm-hmm. And I think the rest of the band had already been out there or something, and I was riding with 2 of the crew guys. And I had the whole back of the van to myself, and, you know, we're going up to 15. You know where I don't even know what it's called now. It used to be called the Blockbuster Pavilion out in Devore.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So you're driving up to 15, you get out of LA, and you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And I remember we had just passed there. And the drum tech, Robert, had put on a Specials album. And is the song called Do Nothing?
Yes.
Okay. So we're driving up, and I hear this solo. And mind you, I'd already heard it before.
But somehow.
And I heard the way he came in, and I listened to, I was listening a little more carefully. I was laying down, and he finished that solo, and I just laid there, and I perked up, and I go, is this the Specials? my buddy Robert looks back and he goes, yeah. And I was like, okay. And I was like, and that's when the light bulb went on. And I was like, holy crap. Okay, now I get it, because sure, if you isolate the sound and you're a jazz trombone player, you'll think, oh yeah, he's okay, whatever. But when you listen to it along with the music and the way it is and the way he vocalizes his solos, you can almost feel him like singing with it.
Yes.
And that's kind of when my light bulb went off, and I was like, oh my God. And after that, I was like, I mean, I copy everything.
And you mentioned solo. So here's what happened. When Don taught Rico, and would say, always take a solo in every song.
Nice.
And every time Rico is in the studio, he hears Don Drummond saying, take a solo.
Take a solo.
Take a solo.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Teach it to the student, always take
Yeah.
a solo in every song.
Yeah.
And Rico was really, really a sweet, kind man too.
I heard that. Yeah. Our buddy Todd Simon, he told me about him. He said the exact same thing. He said he's a sweetheart, and I wish I had a chance to meet him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed. When you were out Cal Arts, you played a variety, and at Citrus, all different types of music.
Yes. Yeah. At Citrus, the teachers there, our main teacher, he wanted to give us university style education at a community college. That was his thing. He's like, I want to train you. Basically, when I'm done with you, you should be ready to go straight into the professional world. You won't even necessarily have to go to the university level. And that was his goal. And that's really how that school runs. Like, if you want to, and I will say this, I've said this before, but he was at the time, he was kind of like the teacher in the movie Whiplash. He used that sort of approach, and it wasn't as dramatic. He didn't throw things at people and lose his temper or whatever. I mean, he would get upset, but it was always followed up with, guys, this is really, really, really serious. Like, when you get out into the world, you're going to realize how hard it can be and how hard it is. And trust me, you're going to wish you were back here. And it was, when he would walk in the room, you felt an energy like, okay, I better be on my toes here, it's serious. And in the professional world, there's only so much room for mistakes, because there's a line of people behind you waiting to take your job. Yeah. I mean, no one, and sometimes they don't even say anything. They just don't call you back.
That's right. You should lay flowers at his grave.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
From junior college, he's taken to the 4-year level.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As a teacher.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So you joined No Doubt in 93? 93. Got it.
Yeah, I met them in the summer of 92, right after the first album came out. The trombone player in the band at the time, Alex Henderson, he started getting some better paying gigs from some Latin artists and whatnot. And so he was looking for somebody to sub for him, because No Doubt couldn't pay him that kind of money that they were paying him at the time. So he was like, okay, this is perfect. Me and him met through Phil. And so he was like, okay, this guy knows how to play, and I can leave the band in good hands. So he started kind of checking out and coming back and checking out and stuff. And so eventually he just checked out and never came back. Yeah, I mean, he did come back, but he came back just to say hi. And because they were like, hey, are you still with us? What's going on?
You think he made a mistake? If you were to make he thinks in his own mind.
No, I think because even at the time, when I would talk to Phil, he would say like, oh, I think Alex kind of wanted to leave, or maybe he didn't feel like he loved them. And I hate trying to speak on his behalf or whatever. And I hope he doesn't regret it, because he's playing with the Brian Setzer Orchestra, and he's doing fine. Like totally. Yeah, he's a great player. I haven't seen him in a minute, but yeah, Alex is hella cool. Yeah, I think it all kind of worked out like well, you know. Yeah.
So to the best of your recollection, was it on or about that same time that Steve and Bradley joined the group?
So okay, so after I had gotten in, I came in 93, and then at the time there was 8 people in No Doubt. We had a saxophone player, and then Gwen's brother Eric was on keyboards, and I'm trying to remember who went first. I think it was Eric Carpenter, our saxophone player, left. And then after that, Eric Stefani left. And then Phil, he had been working because we were studying together. We had the same teacher. Okay. And he decided that he was going to try to he was going to apply for a music degree at Cal State Long Beach, and he got accepted. There was one show, it was like I think it was like a meeting or a test or something he had to do, and we were playing up in the Bay Area, and he couldn't do that show. So our bass player Tony contacted a friend of the band's, a friend of his, Kerry James, who actually I play in a band with now. Oh, wow. He contacted Kerry, and he was like, "Hey, do you know any trumpet players up there? Because we need a guy to sub for our guy who can't make the show." So Kerry was like, "Hey, I know a guy, you know." So he called Steven, and he's like, "Steve, I might have a gig for you." And so Steven shows up to our hotel the day of the show, and I sat there with a boombox, and I had I think it was a board tape from one of our shows, and a couple of CDs, and I literally taught him the set that afternoon. We went into sound check, and I would lean over to him and sing the part right before we played it, and then we would play it. And that night we did the same thing. And you know, when you're doing a gig like that, there's plenty of room for making mistakes, but his mistakes were like very little. I was like, wow, man, like that's, you know, really, really good. And so Tony and Tom and Adrian pulled me aside after the show, and they were like, "So how did he do?" And I was like, "He did great, man." Because they were thinking ahead, like, okay, if Phil is going to be going to school, there's no way we're going to be able to keep him around because, you know, we're going to be gone.
Right.
And so they said, should we keep him? And I was like, yeah, we should keep him, you know? And so, yeah. And then, you know, at the same time, Phil was pretty much like, yeah, I'm going to bow out. I'm going to go to school. I got a great opportunity here. And his life was just on its own, you know, trajectory. So he just went and did that. He didn't, the only thing he regretted was not being able to be on a tour bus and experience a little bit of that. Otherwise, he was totally fine with it too. And then he wound up going on tour. I think he toured with the Offspring for a little bit, and he got to get a little taste of it later at some point. So yeah, it's all kind of interesting how it all worked out, you know?
Yeah, indeed.
So go back to what was your first gig with No Doubt?
My first gig was at UC Riverside. We played an outdoor show at night, and it was in March of 93. Mm-hmm. And that was like one show, I think it was in March. It was either February or March of 93. And yeah, there was that one show Alex couldn't do, came in and subbed for him on that show. And then Alex continued. And then there would be like we did like a run of West Coast shows. I think we went up to the Bay Area. That he couldn't make those either. And there was another time, after that, where he didn't call the band. He called me and said, "Hey, can you fill in for me for these dates?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And so I show up to the band house in Anaheim, and I show up, and they all look at me like, "Hey, Gabe, what are you doing here?" And I go, Alex called me and said he couldn't make the shows. And they were like, "Oh." And I'm like, I can just go home if you don't want me to. They were like, no, stay, it's okay. But they were like, why didn't he call us? And So yeah, I wound up being there, and then at that point I was there for a couple of months, few months maybe, and started learning new songs. I think World Go Round off of Tragic Kingdom, and there was like one other song that I learned that he didn't know, and and I was okay, it's gonna take rehearsal to get him back in, and and we had a bunch of shows almost every week, every so often. So eventually he showed up to one day we were loading out after a little run we did, and then I was like, oh man, he's coming to take his gig back. And then he just came by just to say hi, and he's like, oh no,
turning his resume.
yeah, he was like, this is Gabe's gig now, man, I'm just come by to say what up. And they were like, oh, okay.
Right. So at what point did you realize that No Doubt was going to grow larger than life, larger than the Titanic?
When it happened, I don't think I realized that it was gonna. I will say this though. The day that I met Alex, I saw them play at the Ice House in Fullerton. It must have been probably at the end of '92. And that was my first time seeing them play live. And so I'm in the back of the room, and I'm just, growing up in Glendora. Glendora is very conservative, culturally and politically, but that doesn't really matter. But there was a lot of people that lived there that would never go into the city. I remember I was driving once I got my first car, and I was, exploring my freedom. And we went to church out in South Central LA every Sunday. So my experience of driving through LA was I knew it. Like I've seen, people on drugs and homeless people and whatnot and graffiti and stuff. And there was me and some friends drove out to, we would go to Melrose to go hang out there back in the day when it was cool. And there was a girl that I went to high school with, and me and my friend brought her with us, and a few of us, and we're driving down the 10 freeway, and she goes, "Oh my God." And I'm like, "What?" She goes, "I've never seen that before." And I'm driving. I'm like, "What are you talking about? What do you?" And she goes, "That over there." And I go, "What? What do you see?" And she goes, "The Hollywood sign." And I was like, "You've never seen the Hollywood sign before?" But that's how life, I don't know how they are now, but people just don't go into LA unless maybe they're going to a concert or whatever. But and she was 18, 19 years old, and she'd never seen the Hollywood sign before.
Wow. And she was domestically grown. She's from here.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, going into, I forgot what we were talking about, but yeah, I had experience going into LA a lot, and I kind of had a better, broader understanding of things. And I don't know, I can't remember what you had just asked.
Well, the question was, at what point you realized No Doubt was huge, and you talked about seeing that.
Yes.
House.
So, I mean, people interviewed them, back in the day, and they would always say, we had no idea this was going to happen. And I would watch the interview and be like, yeah, like none of us saw this coming. But I was going to say, so going back to the Ice House show, I get to the show, and so before that, I would go out to clubs. Okay, so me and my friends would go to the Avalon. It used to be called the Palace back then. And they used to have K-Rock night.
Yep.
And they would spin a bunch of alternative music and anything and everything that they were playing on the radio.
Yep.
And I remember being there once, and they played, I think it was a Chili Peppers song. Or it was Suicidal Tendencies or somebody. And this mosh pit formed. I'd never seen one before. I didn't know what it was. And I walked over, and by the time I made it over there, they gone to another song, and the mosh pit disintegrated, and people went back to dancing. And I was like, well, man, I hope they play that song again. That looked kind of fun. So I was like into just being in crowds and like doing the thing. So I walk into this No Doubt show, and I had been listening to their record a bunch of times at this point. And they started playing, and people were crowd surfing, and And I was just like, oh man, I got to get in there. I turned around and went to the merch guy and I said, excuse me, can you hold my wallet and my keys? And he goes, yeah, just put them in this bucket here. And I was like, all right. And so I put them in the bucket, and me and my buddy were straight up in there. And I just became an instant fan. And I was like, this band is fun. What's going on that stage and in this room is just nothing but pure fun. And I was like, even if I'm not a part of it, I was happy just to know them and happy just to experience this. I didn't think it was going to get huge. I just thought maybe on a local level and maybe California West Coast kind of vibe or something, but like I didn't expect us to go around the world. I mean, we went to India, we went to Singapore, we went to Brazil, like Japan several times. I mean, we went all over the place, man.
Wow.
Like,
to talk about some of the highlights, some countries where maybe the fan responses just blew your mind.
People would ask me this a few times, and there was one show we played. I mean, there's a lot of them, but like, even like, okay. So there was one particular show we played in '97. We played at at like this theater in Tel Aviv, Israel.
Wow.
And yeah, oh my God. Those guys can party. Holy crap. Like we went the record label promoters, they took us, we did the tourist thing. We went into the Dead Sea, and we went and floated in the Dead Sea, and they took us all around, went to Jerusalem and stuff. And when we played, they took us out to dinner one night. And so we're like, hey, can we is there some clubs we can go to, or we want to go see some more nightlife and stuff. And the guy looks at his watch, and it was like 9:30 at night, and we weren't necessarily wanting to go now, but is there anything happening later? And he looks at his watch, and he's like, it's gonna be a while before things start, get pumping. And we're like, okay, what, like 11 or something? He goes, oh no, it's gonna be a little later than that. We're like, wow. Like, okay. So we get done eating dinner, and we went to is there a bar anywhere we can go to? And he was like, yeah, I can maybe find this bar. And we went to some spot. They were just serving alcohol. It wasn't like a bar. I mean, it was a bar, but the lights were kind of bright and whatnot. So we sat there and had some drinks, and then midnight rolls around, and we're like, what about now? And he's, yeah, I mean, if you want to go now, we can. But like, he didn't seem very enthusiastic about it. We're like, let's just go. And, we'd been drinking and stuff. And we're like, even if there's 15 or, 100, whatever people in there, like, let's just go. And he was like, all right, if you guys really want to go. We were among the first people in that club. I thought maybe it was a dead night. So we get into our booth and we got some drinks and sat down. And as we continued, by 1 o'clock in the morning, people start coming in, and we hung out there. We did pretty good. We lasted till around 3, maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock. I mean, by this point, I think Gwen was like, I need my beauty sleep. I'm out of here. And, the guys, we kind of hung out a little longer. And we stumbled out of that place probably around 4 in the morning.
Wow. Yeah.
There was a line of people still trying to get in. It wasn't a short line. It was, what's that?
Live band or turntable?
DJs or live band or?
Oh, DJs. It was a DJ thing. Yeah. Yeah, there was a line of people still waiting to get in.
Yeah. Talk about
when we stumbled out of there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the show itself was amazing. Like, it was 2,000 or 3,000 people, and Don't Speak was a big international hit. So when we played that song, Gwen kind of stuck the microphone towards the audience, and everybody in the room just sang at the top of their lungs. It was like, oh my God, that was one memorable spot. Japan, like Tokyo, everybody went in Japan the first time, and people had warned us, at the time, they were like, oh man, they love American music and anything, like that punk ska stuff. And we didn't really know what to expect. And there was people at the hotel, and wanting to take pictures with us, and we'd never experienced anything like that before. Like, just that was amazing.
Pure fandom. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
did you guys play Latin America?
Yes, we at the time, we went to Argentina, we went to Brazil, we went to Chile. We went. Those were the only three places we played. We didn't. We hadn't gone to. Later, we played in Venezuela. Those were the ones that No Doubt played. And then with Gwen, we went to Colombia. I think I'm missing another country, but I think that was about it.
Yeah.
And your tours of Europe extensive?
Europe?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we went to Europe several times. We played pretty much most every country in Central and Western Europe, but we did hit Czech Republic. It was called at the time.
Yes.
I think it's called Czechia now. But we played there. We played, I think it was Hungary. I think those were the only two Eastern European countries that we hit during that time. But yeah, we went to Europe probably 2 or 3 times on that record, on the Tragic Kingdom experience.
Yeah. We're going to now fast forward. We're going to talk about Junior's homeland. So talk about the experience recording Rocksteady in Jamaica. It was released in 2001, had huge hits with Hey Baby, Underneath It All. Talk about that experience. Had you previously been to Jamaica?
No, I had never been to Jamaica before.
Okay. So talk about that.
Oh man, wow. That was amazing. I mean, I barely saw Kingston at the time, and people had always said, "Oh, it's very dangerous. Be careful." So I landed. I came in on my own, and the band had already been there recording. And so I landed, and I can't remember who picked me up. I think it was Wayne Jobson's brother, Brian. I think he was the one who picked me up from the airport. And I believe I had met him once before. If not, I saw him and I was like, "Oh God, you look like Wayne's brother."
Right.
And so I jumped in the car, and he drove me over to Port Antonio. So I barely saw Kingston, but we drove through the mountains and made our way over there. It was just beautiful, great place to be, but the studio itself was pretty, bare bones. But the energy of just being there and having been exposed to and having been playing Jamaican music, it was definitely an experience that was pretty magical. And of course, the producers that we worked with there, that was a great experience. Sly and Robbie,
incredible,
were great to work with. There was at that studio, they had some bungalows that were on site, and I think there were 4 of them, or maybe 5 of them, and so the band had already taken each their own bungalow. So I had to, unfortunately, stay in the mansion up the road with Sly and Robbie.
I feel so bad.
Poor guy. But so if you could go from the general to the specific, what was it like working with Sly and Robbie, the Rhythm Twins, as they're known globally?
They were like the godfathers of the rhythm, the Jamaican rhythm, and especially more modern, not dance hall, but modern reggae rhythms. And I remember recording Underneath It All. Mm-hmm. And I had a clavinet.
Lady Saw, right?
Lady Saw, yes. And I was recording my tracks, and I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do. Playing keyboards is always a difficult thing. trying to figure out where to fit in, what to play. And I guess with reggae music is not so difficult because you've got piano, organ, clavinet, or something else that kind of does some functions as the same. But in the other styles, I always kind of go, well, if I do this, the song is going to shift into this new wave sound, or it's going to shift to there. And what are we trying to do? And so I always find myself kind of wondering, like, okay, what should I contribute to this? And no doubt songs are so, the genres change from one to the other. So I always find myself kind of scratching my head going, okay, where am I going to fit in on this? Or is it just going to be horns? Or do we have horns at all? You know, so there's all these different questions I have going through my head. But when we played Underneath It All, I kind of had like, okay, I want to do like a clavinet with a wah, you know? And so I had it all hooked up, engineer gets it going. And I asked them, I said, are you guys okay with that? And they were like, yeah, let's try it. If it doesn't work, you know, we just won't use it or whatever. And I was like, okay. And so I plugged it, we got it all set up and ready to go. And I just started playing along to it. And I'm sitting there kind of, you know, they're both sitting there just watching me like this, you know, and I'm like, okay.
It must have been a little intimidating.
Just a little bit, you know. And so I get done with the first take, and Robbie looks at me and he goes, yeah, man, sounds good. And I was like, thank you. I was like, I got to go back and clean a few things up. And he goes, yeah, man, do whatever you got to do. Like, and they basically just kind of went back to whatever it was they were doing. Like, okay, he knows what he's doing. And I was like, oh, thank you. You know, so yeah, it was great working with them. I think producing bands that kind of already have a feel for what they want to do, producers don't need to get too in there. They're just more kind of holding space.
Not as heavy-handed, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not like, oh, do it like this, and no, don't do it like that. You know, they were kind of more like
hands off. Yeah,
hands off, but listening and going, oh, you know, this is working really well, or you know, maybe we should try this. You know, that kind of thing. But they were very very accommodating and very they were just with it, you know, they were with us in there. It was really, really cool, man. Great working with them. You know, yeah.
And I'm not sure if you're aware that Robbie became an ancestor.
Right. Robbie passed. Was it last year?
Yeah. He went home.
Right.
Yeah. Very much so. Yes. I actually made a post on that in Instagram, and I think it happened to be somewhere around the anniversary of the Rocksteady album. I think it was. So we were in the studio one day, and
where? Jamaica?
At G Jam in Jamaica. And I had recently, probably, been a few years. I had been getting heavily into dub music. The only way for me to get a lot of it was just to purchase compilation CDs. And I guess when they were originally pressed, they were on 45 or 10-inch anyways. So I was buying a lot of compilations, and so I remember there was a bass line that was in my head. It was the intro to this tune, and I wish I could reference exactly the tune right now. So I started singing the bass line in my head, and I'm singing it out loud. And the thing about the studio, there was problems with the electricity in the area, not the studio, and so every once in a while the power would go down. And they had a one of those backup battery things that would it would switch on when the power went out, so the computer would stay on for another 5 or 10 minutes, enough time to save what the work we had done and power the computer down, and you know, and then wait for the power to come back on. And so it was probably one of those moments, and I just started singing, you know, because I mean, I kind of loaded up my CD wallet with just, you know, and I already usually have a lot of Jamaican music with me, but I kind of just went full tilt, and the whole wallet was just compilations and, you know, all kinds of stuff just for inspiration as well. And I start singing this bass line, and I'm just kind of humming it to myself, and Robbie looks at me and he goes, "What's that you're singing, man?" And I go, I don't know, man. This bass line's in my head, and yeah, it's from this dub compilation I have. And he goes, "Huh, okay," you know. And he asked me a few people, and I'm like, I have no idea who it is, man. I'm because I'm putting the CD in, and I'm reading the who's on what, but I'm not remembering track 7 is, you know, King Tubby or, you know, whatever. So, and I was like, I don't know who it is, man. I mean, you could say a bunch of names and I'll probably be, yeah, that might be one of them because he's on that compilation too, or so forth. And so at that evening, we all get in the car to drive back up to the mansion up the road. And I had my CD wallet with me, and I was like, oh, zip it open. I was like, put this in. And he puts it in, and I go to track 1. And I'm like, no, it's not track 1. Go to the next one. Go to the next one. And we're listening to about, you know, 15, 20 seconds of each one. And then Robbie he's like, this is a compilation. And I go, yeah. And he's kind of laughing to himself. And I'm like, it's on here. I know it's on here. It's in one of these on here. And I go, what is it? And he goes, I played on all of these.
I believe
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So I think they played on 500,000 songs that they produce, playing with other people. Yeah, about 500,000.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And to watch Robbie and Sly together too on stage as they would back artist after artist just made it seem so easy and so.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Well,
There was a, and I can't remember what tune it was, but we were like, Tony wanted Robbie to play. And so I think he did part of one song, or I'm not sure if it all got you, but I remember seeing Robbie playing the bass, and I'm pretty sure he plays bass on a part of one song or something like that. And I know he did, like, we were like, just do something, or maybe, you know, he was probably just showing like ideas or something or whatever, but I remember him playing. And then Sly had a little MPC, and so he was like kind of doing that stuff, and adding a little extra, you know, noises and whatnot, and some of this stuff. And yeah, that was a lot of fun.
What an incredible
The
experience.
rhythm twins.
Indeed. So when the almost every time that I've seen No Doubt play, one of my favorite moments is when you all would pay homage to the Scatolites and do Guns of Navarone.
Oh yeah, man.
So whose idea was that? And did you all regularly do any other songs from the golden era?
So that came because so that would have been in the 2009 tour. And by this point, Gwen had already been solo, and I toured with her on both of her 2 solo albums. And you know, when you're a pop artist, you know, and you're female, it's pretty much expected of you to do more than one outfit.
You got to do some costume changes.
Yes. So, and you know, and in all fairness, you know, nobody really wants sweaty photos of them with their clothes hanging off of them, you know. So, you know, I get it. We all get it. And plus also, you know, you want to look, you know, you want to show off, and, you know, as much into fashion as she is, you know, it's like, okay, of course, you know, she's gonna do a costume change. So that idea came up, and then we're like, well, we can do something. So, you know, some ideas got thrown around, and then someone, I'm not sure exactly who, but it was like, hey, we're thinking about maybe doing Guns of Navarone. And I was like, dude, twist my arm, let's go. So we actually did the specials version, which was also, you know, paying homage to the Scatolites. And because I would say that, you know, most of the third wave of ska wouldn't have existed without the specials, because that, or all of the two-tone bands. I shouldn't, discredit anybody else, because, the Selector, Madness, obviously Eric Stefani was hugely influenced by Madness, but the specials, they're like everyone's favorite, second wave ska band. Sure. And so yeah, we did sort of their version of it. But we actually did play, I think in the intro, I think we played the Scotalites' version of it, and which was playing behind something else. It was kind of like a sort of a foreshadowing thing that we had included in the
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we ran it down, and when I hear another version, and especially the fact that Rico plays a solo on there, I had to play his solo. Like, I just had to do it. It was just like, when you hear the way we were playing it, the version we were doing, it's like, how can you not play that solo? And I love the solo so much, and I like
Don Drummond says, right?
You got a solo.
Exactly.
Tell no one.
Totally.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Well, and I last saw some of you guys do this at the Musex event.
Yeah, that was fun.
Area Hall, which we need to talk about.
Yes, we do.
I mean, it was so special for me just being in the audience. But so, what was it like for you to be back on stage with your brothers and close friends, right? Paying tribute to Terry Hall, which I know is special to you and the band.
Totally.
No pun intended, special. but also on stage, right? You all at the back, Linville Golden from the Specials,
yes.
Angela Moore, Chris Dowd from Fishbone got up on stage. Jane Whelan from the Go-Go's.
Yep.
And somebody who some people might know of, Tom Morello guy.
Yeah, some Tom Morello guy.
Talk about that experience.
That was, and I hate to use this word all the time, but for lack of a better word, yes, it was amazing. It was emotional too. Yes, I played with Dream Car, but that's not No Doubt. And Dream Car is fun to play in. It's fun to play with my brothers, regardless of what we're playing. But playing, yeah, it's, chemistry 101. I mean, it's just bare bones, basic chemistry. And that alone was fun. We rehearsed for a couple of days ahead of time. And so we were going to play the gig. Billy Idol was going to perform with us. I think something happened where he wasn't able to do it. I think he had gotten sick or something. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but he wound up pulling out of the show, the event. And so the last few days, we were kind of just looking to see who else would be interested in doing it. And Fishbone was already playing. And, I think it was like, okay, we don't want to add more, to your workload, Angelo and Chris, but if you'd be down, we'd be totally down to have you, and so they stepped in and we did Sunday Morning. We did, Song Off a Tragic Kingdom with them. And I have to say this about that band because I would say in my eyes, the two biggest influences, let me say this right now. The biggest influence for the live performance of No Doubt, the madness that is going on, no pun intended, is Fishbone.
Yeah. Like
nobody had ever performed like that. In my eyes, such animation. Yeah. I mean, and it's just like what the hell is going on here? If you're sitting down watching a Fishbone show, you probably are injured. And even if you're injured, you're going to be doing something moving something, because like that band, I mean, I remember seeing Fishbone, and it was a little bit more recent, and I was watching Angelo and he was like hanging from like the ceiling. There was like a beam in the ceiling, and he was up there, and he had his suit on, and he's sweating, and he's holding his microphone, and he's singing. You can see veins popping out of his neck. And I look at him and I go, that guy has no idea how old he is. He doesn't realize he's in his 50s, and he doesn't give a damn if you told him. Like he was performing like he was 19 years old.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to be like that guy when I get older.
Yeah. They're still going strong.
Yeah, dude. You know, to my regret, I've only seen them once, and I don't know why I've seen them more.
Yeah. Well, the next time they come around, we got to see them again. But no, I agree with you, and I love how great they were. I mean, at Musex doing their own set, and then doing with you, and then they got up with members of the Specials as well.
Yeah,
that was magical. And we do have some footage that I took from the Musex event up on our YouTube channel, including the kicking it off with Guns of Navarone too.
That was fun, man. That was a really fun evening. And you know, seeing there was a lot of people in the crowd that that I haven't seen since we were playing clubs or theaters, or since the 90s, and it was so
in a sense was a reunion, huh?
Yeah, it was a reunion, not of only the bands, but just the people in the crowd. I imagine people in the crowd were like, "Oh my God, I haven't seen you in a long time." It was a huge thing, and unfortunately, it took someone to die to bring us all together. But we did get together, So
right. And I guess that's the key,
yeah.
So you've recorded and toured with several big name bands that are larger than life. When we say the names, maybe I want to share some memorable experience. Green Day, the Pulsating Steel Pulse, John McNair.
Shirley Manson of Garbage, Smashing Pumpkins, Lenny Kravitz. Mention maybe if you can, and we can rattle down again. But talk about some of the experiences working with those groups.
Okay, so I'll start with Green Day.
And I know we just scratched the surface. You worked with many others, but
yeah. Green Day was a lot of fun. They to me, like, that experience was like it was like spending a month with your aunt, like your mom's sister, and your cousins on your mom's side of the family, away from home. You're spending a month with them. And yeah, it was a similar sort of parenting sort of thing. And I felt like we were cousins. Like, they didn't play ska and reggae and stuff, but the punk side of No Doubt, like, kind of connected with them on that level. And so yeah, it felt like a similar feeling, a similar vibe. And I will say, like, I'll say my top 5 band front people, and I'm not trying to be biased here, but I've seen a lot just in concerts and whatnot. But my top 5 favorite, I think I'll say greatest, my top 5 greatest of all time front people, and I'm not going to put them in any particular order, would be Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day, David Lee Roth from Van Halen, Angelo Moore from Fishbone. Oh my God, I did this just the other day. I was just thinking about this. Oh man, I'm having a total brain fart right now.
Okay.
This is embarrassing. Oh man.
What genre?
I'm gonna say Angelo Moore, and then, oh God, this is so bad. Queen.
Oh, Freddie Mercury.
Thank you. God dang it.
Of course.
Brain's getting old.
That's okay.
Yes, Mr. Freddie Mercury. Yeah. I never saw Queen, but we've all seen clips of him at Rite Aid, and like, he's definitely a force to be reckoned with.
So where would James Brown fit in?
He's
on another
a
level.
solo artist.
Huh?
Solo artist.
James Brown is a solo artist in my eyes.
Yeah,
he had a backing band that was known.
I get it.
But of my particular time, I'm gonna go probably 80s forward as far as front like performer. But I mean James Brown, I mean, you know, you can't really compare those guys to him.
No, I mean just for clarity.
He's off the list on the upper end. Like he's up here.
Right. Yeah. Indeed. Yeah. No, I can imagine how.
All right, so we're gonna throw in the pulsating steel pulse.
You know, I only recorded with Steel Pulse. I didn't get to perform with them. Steven, the trumpet player, no doubt, he did tour with them for a while.
Oh, nice.
And I did. I recorded two songs on their last record, not the one that's currently out. And then I've met David and I met those guys a couple of times, a few times. Super nice guys, you know.
Right. On the list, how about Shirley Manson?
So Shirley and I wrote a tune for a movie soundtrack. We've actually never performed. Well, I think she's come on stage with No Doubt a few times. Yes, she definitely did. But I had some, these guys approached me to write some music for a movie they were working on. It was an indie film. And we sat down and had a meeting, and they were, you know, we sort of opened up our laptops and trying to get like some sort of creative inspiration on what direction. And they had given me the script, and it was a bit of a dark kind of movie about an artist. So the director of the movie, we open up our laptops and start talking, and he's like, yeah, I'm thinking of something like, and he says like, you know, like a Patti Smith. And I'm like, okay, Patti Smith. And I'm thinking something like, and I go, Susie and the Banshees. And he goes, yeah, Susie and the Banshees. I go, yeah, something like that. I'm like, okay. And he named off a few more names. And then I just went, Shirley Manson. He goes, wow, that would actually be perfect to get her. And I was like, all right, I'll reach out to her. He goes, you know her? And I go, yeah, I know Shirley, you know. Yeah. And so I reached out to Shirley and I said, I don't know if you're interested, but I just got asked to do this thing. And she was like, sure. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So then I wrote just a little piece of a tune. I didn't want to get crazy with production. And in case I needed to write something else, that in case it didn't inspire her to write anything. And I wrote like a little verse chorus of a little thing and sent it to her. And I said, let me know if this moves you at all. If not, I'll make something else. And the next day she sends me something that she had written over it. And I was like, wow, okay. And then I sat down with the director and showed it to him. And he was like, whoa. They actually was the first creative thing that came to reality, like aside from the script and all that stuff. Okay. And that was like the first production thing. And the two of them actually celebrated. They went out and had a drink. They were like, wow, this thing's actually going to take off. Like it's getting real now. Yeah, the stake kind of had risen a little higher. So then I finished the track and sent it to her. And the funny thing about that, especially with technology today, we were never in the same room the whole time. And we were in LA. And had I known this, I wouldn't have even approached her, but she was actually working on another Garbage album. And I found out later, like, she's like, oh, yeah, I was working on a Garbage album. And I'm like, dude, I'm glad you didn't tell me, because I would have said, oh, no, stay with that. But she just churned that out super fast. And I was like, dude, she is like on fire, man. She was great. She is great.
So since we mentioned these other two names, let's go through Smashing Pumpkins and Lenny Kravitz.
So Smashing Pumpkins, back in the 90s, they were one of my favorite bands of that time. At the first few listens, and again, similar to Rico, I wasn't too crazy about Billy's voice, although I did like the songs, but I didn't really I didn't really listen to much of their music.
Yeah.
But I was going through this thing that I was like, there was this girl I was interested in, and and it wasn't really working out, and so a buddy of mine, he was super into them, and I think their album Melancholy and Infinite Sadness had just come out.
Okay.
And so me and him went on this road trip. We went up in the mountains, and there was a friend of his that was having some party at a cabin or something. So we went driving for like 2 hours to get there. And he goes, dude, you need to hear this Smashing Pumpkins album. And I was like, all right, put the shit on, man, let's go. And he puts it on, and I'm already kind of sad. So, and when you're sad, and you listen to that kind of music, and for me at least, I was like, oh, that's kind of when the light went on for me. And then I became hooked, at that point. So, and I had heard, rumors, Billy can be hard to work with, and he's a little difficult, and he's very picky, and this and all these other things. And I'm a very patient guy when it comes to working with people or anything. I'm just patient. So I was like, well, and so his bass player at the time, she had gotten married to a good friend of mine, Chris Pooley, who was actually Gwen's music director on the first two tours that we had done. And so I went to their wedding, and Ginger, she was Chris's wife. She invited her bandmates to the wedding, and I sat next to Billy and the other guys at the reception, and so like we hung out and chopped it up for a while. And he's a pretty deep dude, man. Like he listens to a lot of different stuff, and we talked about like free jazz, and like I was like, wow, Ornette Coleman, and like yeah, he knew like stuff, and I was like, wow, this guy's pretty deep. And so we hit it off pretty well and everything, and so probably the following year, Billy wanted to do something to celebrate. I think it was 20 years of the band's existence. And he had him and Jimmy were the only two originals at the time, and so and Chris, he would come out and be the girlfriend or the wife, like coming out and not doing anything and just being there, like with his fiance and just hanging out. And then him and Billy were talking, and Billy is like, okay, you're hanging out here too long, and I know you can play, so why don't you get a keyboard and, find something to play, and he was like, all right, cool. So then both of them were in the band. And so Billy was talking to them, and he was like, yeah, I've been thinking about, wanting to do something special for the 20-year anniversary. And he goes, I don't know. He's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't know, maybe bring a string section or maybe even horns or something. And so Chris was like, well, you remember Gabe, he was at the wedding, I can probably make that happen pretty easily if you're interested in that, and they thought about some other ideas. And then Billy was like, let's try the horn thing. We've never done that before. So Chris calls me up, and I came out there. And knowing the potential, difficulty or mood or whatever it was, I was mentally equipped for anything. And he was super cool. He was very specific to what he wanted, and it wasn't a problem. He knew what he wanted, and we rehearsed a lot, and he was great to work with. I think. When you stay in your lane and just
sure.
let him do his thing. And I'm kind of used to that. I'm a hired guy. I don't, I'm not one to go, well, I think this sounds better. I don't think we should run it like, I'm like, whatever you need, I can make it happen. And so it was super easy, and he was great. Him and Jimmy, and yeah, everyone in the band was awesome. And we had a really good time. And actually, when we were finishing up, we would have possibly continued, but at the end of that tour, Stephen and I had just gotten word that No Doubt was going to tour the following year. That was the 2009 tour that we did.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So yeah, we would have probably continued on and maybe did one more run with them, but unfortunately that came to a quicker end. But yeah, I had a great time working with them. They were great.
What about
last but not least?
What about Lenny?
So Lenny, funny enough about that, when I got out of high school, I knew that I wanted to play music. I knew that I was aiming to be, I was ready to be a starving jazz musician. I was ready to, I was big into Miles Davis, Wynton Marsalis, John Coltrane, Herbie Hancock, Keith Jarrett. I listened to a lot of that stuff. And so, that's where I was mentally headed. And then, people would ask me all the time when I was younger, like, you're a musician, what kind of music do you play? And I would tell them, well, I'm a jazz musician, but I play with this band, this rock band called No Doubt. I don't even think I even said the name of the band, because a lot of people I would talk to, like they wouldn't even know who they were at the time. And I would say, yeah, sometimes I play rock music too. There's a band that I play with every once in a while. Mm-hmm. And I do that off to the side. That's what I would say. That was just a side thing that I was doing. But when I got out of high school, I remember listening to the radio, and at the time, do you remember Columbia House?
Sure. Of course, the mail order.
So yeah. Columbia House is a mail order CD store, and for 1 penny, they would send you a box of 10 CDs, and then you had to buy like 6 more
for the rest of your life.
For the rest of your life, exactly. So Lenny Kravitz, his second album, Mama Said, had just come out. And I wanted to hear that, and I that was among the albums that I bought. And I remember listening to that, and he had horns on it. And at that time, I had not heard of No Doubt yet. So at the time, I was like, that would be the only thing non-jazz, non-classical that I could do, would be playing with him. And I became a fan of his music. I liked the fact that he was black and he was playing rock and roll.
Yeah.
Yes. Because I grew up on a lot of different kinds of music. In my household, sure, we had plenty of Stevie Wonder and Earth, Wind and Fire and Cameo, and but there was also the Police, there was Devo, there was Styx, there was variety. Yeah. And we had all kinds of Boston, we had rock, we had pop, we had everything. My parents and my family, we weren't, everyone was pretty open-minded with the kind of music that we listened to and was allowed in the house. B-52s, all kind of, we would turn on Rock Lobster and blast it and dance around the living room. We were fully in just anything and everything. And so I was listening to Lenny, and I noticed that, kind of right away. I was like, we had Jimi Hendrix, and then there was nothing, and then Lenny Kravitz came along, and I was like, well, at least somebody's playing rock and roll, and he was great, he had dreads, and he was good looking dude, and the ladies loved him, and they still do now, and he still looks like he's freaking 19 years old. Cut to 2011. Yes, 2011. And I was on tour with the TV show Glee. Mm-hmm. They were doing a live production, and I was in the house band, and I did some trombone and a little guitar and some keys on that tour. And while I was on that tour, I got a phone call from, before that tour, I got a phone call from Lenny's sax player, Harold. And he was checking, he got my number from a mutual friend. And he was just asking, if I was available. And I was like, yeah, I'm around, let me know. I would love to, do that. And I was like, wow, that'd be cool, but I whenever I get calls like that, I usually just go, I don't get excited about it, because I'm like, how this business is.
Never know.
Like one thing, and then all of a sudden, it all fell apart. So I said, yeah, you know, you got my number, man. I'll make it happen. If you need anything, let me know. And I didn't hear from him at all. And funny enough, while I was on the Glee tour, I get a phone call from Sublime with Rome's manager. And he told me that Sublime had just reformed. They got this new singer named Rome, and they were looking, and I had already heard about it.
Right.
And they were looking for a keyboard trombonist. And I was like, well, you came to the right place. So we went back and forth for a little bit. And by this point, we're talking about, you know, production stuff. And I'm talking to their production manager, and he's asking me, how many inputs do you need for your keyboards and your trombone, and how much stage space do you need, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know, we're going through all that. So I'm thinking it's kind of a done deal. And then kind of not at the last minute, it was a little bit of time before we were going to get together. They decided to use a DJ instead.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and so I get home off this Glee tour, and I'm like, okay, what now? I got to figure out, you know, what I'm going to do for work. And miraculously, this is pretty much the story of my life. Literally a day or two goes by, and I get a call from Harold from Lenny Kravitz's band again. And they had already hired another trombone player, and it wasn't really working out. And they were in production rehearsals. They were about to do a tour. And hey, just checking your availability. Are you around? And I go, actually, I am totally available. And then their tour manager calls me a few minutes later, and they book me a ticket. He goes, yeah, we just need you to come out. Lenny wants to hear you play, and he wants to meet you, blah, 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 blah. And I said, okay. I'd fly out to, I think it was Charlotte, North Carolina. Is that Charlotte, Raleigh? One of the Carolinas we went to. And we went out there, or they were there because Lenny was filming the Hunger Games.
Oh, wow, yes.
And so we had production, they were having production rehearsals there. And and they actually had another trombone player come out too. And we both auditioned to get into his band. And you know, the parts aren't crazy difficult, not that they're easy, but you know, once you get to a certain level, like that kind of stuff's not, you know. So, you know, we're both learning the parts, and you know, I'm thinking we're both kind of chatting, me and the other trombone player, and I will say this about trombone players, through my experience, most of the trombone players that I know are super nice people. Along my journey, I met Delphio Marsalis, Wynton Marsalis's younger brother, and he has been super cool to me. He's such a good guy, and I've hung out with him many, many times, and like super nice guy. He's given me tapes. He's turned me on to bands that are non-related to jazz at all, like Mahavishnu Orchestra. I guess that's sort of related to jazz, but like something you wouldn't expect somebody like him to turn me on. He turned me on to Mahavishnu Orchestra. I already knew about Weather Report, but he gave me a bunch of tapes, and he's like, dude, you got to check these guys out, and you know, transcribe these solos, and you got to work on this, and like super nice. Anyways, so the other trombone player, me and him are sitting there talking. He goes, man, I don't know how Lenny's gonna pick one of us because it sounds the same, you know. They're like, you know, I'll go, yeah, and he leans over and goes, you know what? He goes, I'm gonna take my parts down an octave. Maybe we can both get the gig. And I was like, all right. And that's kind of how trombone players, like, I mean, in my experience, I don't really encounter people that are competitive. It's more like, okay, hey, let's work together, or let's figure this out, or man, you should get this gig, dude. You got this one. Same thing with like me and Alex. Like Alex met me, and I think he was just like, yeah, dude, you should get this gig. Like, you know, I was 5 or 6 years younger than him, and he was doing those Latin gigs, and you know, and I think he was just like, dude, you should do this. He didn't say that to me, but I could feel him kind of thinking that as we were kind of hanging out and stuff. I think he was like,
lift each other up. Yeah.
So we were rehearsing, and finally, you know, Lenny comes in, and we went through, and he goes, okay, let's get you up there, Gabe. I want to hear you play. And so I played with the horn section, and we went through the thing, and then he got the other guy up, and he plays, and then he has, Gabe, get back on the stage on the riser. And so he's like, can you move over to your right a little bit? I'm like, I'll move over. And then, the other guy's name was Steve, and he's, Steve, move over to your left. Da, 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 da. And I knew the guy who was doing the lights because he had worked with No Doubt previously. And so the other guy, Steve, his plan was about to work. And Lenny's back there at the lighting, at the sound booth. He goes, man, I want to bring them both.
You did.
And so, but his tour manager was like, yeah, we're gonna run out of space on the bus and blah 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 blah. And he was like, oh, okay. And so they wound up picking me. I was the lucky one to get the gig. That was a great experience. Lenny is about the age of my two older brothers, and so hanging with him in a sort of way was like hanging with them in a weird kind of way. And so because they were kind of in that same era, like of music and whatnot, and even pop culture stuff. And so he's a great band leader. Lenny is. He really likes to have a good time. He likes to jam on stage. And he's a fantastic performer, great guitar player, great singer, great everything. And he plays everything on his records, unless it's horns or something he doesn't know how to play. But all the basic tracks, guitar, bass, drums, he does it all. And it's funny because, we're playing every night, and I play drums. And so I'm watching the drummer, and I'm listening. I'm like, wow, he's really like getting that sound really well. And then after day 3 of rehearsals, I'm listening to him, and I'm like, wow, he's playing the exact same drum fill and the exact same thing. And I'm like, well, hey, it works, and so I was talking to him, and he was like, oh, no, Lenny wants everything exactly how he played it. And I was like, wow. He goes, yeah, I can't stray it all away from, and usually drummers get plenty of freedom to do the drum fills or whatever they want to do. And no, Lenny was like, nope, play that. He goes, I played those drums. I know exactly how it sounds, and that's how I want it. And like, hey, man, I mean, it's just like playing in an orchestra. You're not going to sit there playing Beethoven's Fifth and going, oh, I want to play this. Like, no. What exactly like it. And that's why the band was so consistent. I mean, that's one of the reasons why. The musicians were phenomenal to work with. So that was a great thing. But I had a great time playing with Lenny. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So let's talk about your work outside of No Doubt with your friend and bandmate Tony Kanal. So so you worked with him, I believe, on some of his own productions, right?
Yes.
Including on a singer who Junior and I have known for a while, Elon. But talk about some of your work with Tony on those projects.
So Tony was starting to dip his toes into the production world, as producer and writer, and I can't remember if it was Gwen's stuff first or Elon's stuff first. I think it was Gwen. It must have been Gwen, because she had gone solo, and he had written a couple of tunes, a couple of songs with her. And since Tony and I had known each other so long, he's like, dude, you want to come and do some keyboards? And I'm like, absolutely. So we hung out a bit and did some stuff, and it was great. He was, obviously easy to work with. I mean, it's family. So, that was a lot of fun. And so when it came to, and then he also did some other stuff. I think he co-wrote and produced a song for the band Pepper. Yeah. And then we also did some stuff for the soundtrack for the movie 50 First Dates.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of those was one of those was with Elon. And then we also did Elon's record together. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. And there were some of the tracks that Elon had done. He had some other musicians on there too, but certain ones that didn't have keys and stuff on them, that, Tony, I came over to his house and we worked together a bit. And it was, kind of like making a No Doubt record,
So Gabe, all your life you practice one profession, one only, that's playing music. Wow, what a lucky cat.
Knock on wood. I don't know how I'm still standing, but I am extremely blessed and fortunate to be
Wow.
still doing this.
So let's talk about your own group, Oslo, right?
Yes.
Some of the highlights of that project.
Well, I had been wanting to do something on my own. My aim was to I think from going to so many festivals and seeing so many other bands, because I love doing festivals and radio shows and seeing the other bands because they inspire and influence your sound, especially watching them do it live, because that's the real essence of, it's the records are one thing, but seeing how it's executed live is a whole different situation. And back in the 90s, things were a lot more diverse than they are now. So you would have there were more bands that were doing this electronic and rock thing, sort of the Nine Inch Nails kind of thing. There were more bands doing that kind of sound. And then you had, punk, you had the more grungy, heavier kind of bands. And then you had some that were just very unique. I don't know. I find that there was a different kind of thing. I mean, even bands like Cake, where do you put that band at? Or Squirrel Nut Zippers, and it was a lot of diversity going on at the time. So funny enough, one of the bands, and I remember going into the back lounge on the bus often, and I would go back there to listen to music, and I would open up the CD player, and a CD would pop out, and it was the same CD every time. And I looked and saw the titles of the songs, and I would set the CD down, and I would pop in my John Coltrane or my Miles Davis, and I'd sit there and listen and hang out. And then I'd leave the back lounge, and I'd come back the next day, and I'd go to listen to some music again, and that same CD kept popping out, and I'm like, okay, I keep seeing the CD. I don't know who it is, but whatever. And eventually, I had gotten into the band Radiohead, and they had they had their first album, Pablo Honey, had come out and had the Creep song on it and whatnot. And by this point, when I started getting into them, was when OK Computer came out, and so I was like, okay, I gotta listen to this stuff. So I went to the record store and I bought OK Computer, and I also bought the Bends. And I was like, okay, before I listen to OK Computer, I'm gonna listen to the Bends, because I'm a chronological guy. I like to listen to a band develop. I'm not into I'll listen to the new stuff, but I want to hear the story from the beginning, because listening to a band or an artist's progression, especially back then, I don't know so much now, but I like listening to, and any band or any artist, usually people always say, oh, they're great, but their old stuff is so much, And so I'm like, okay, let me listen to the Bends first. And I tear off the cellophane and I open the CD, and lo and behold, there's that CD that I kept seeing popping out of the CD player. And Gwen was listening to the Bends. So I started getting into them, and there were other bands that are in that similar Britpop, alternative Britpop, if you will, sound, The Verve, and Blur, a little bit of Oasis. I couldn't really stomach them because, I don't like people who are arrogant. I don't care how good they are. I mean, if you're going to be arrogant, you have to be David Bowie. Miles Davis was arrogant, and he was one of my biggest influences, but he's got so much wiggle room to be arrogant. You just kind of go, well, yeah, that's Miles. I mean, come on, we got to meet David Bowie. We met him on an airplane once, and he was super nice. And even that guy could have been arrogant, and I still would be listening to David Bowie records. So to see a band that was still young and growing to be as arrogant as the Oasis guys were, I was just like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Although I will follow that up by saying I saw a documentary on them, and I'm like, you know what? They were just some punks trying to rule the world like the rest of us. And so I get it. And they're great songwriters, and I hope they get back together one day. But anyways, I started getting into that sound. And then Stephen Bradley's friend Carrie and I, we had connected a handful of times, just at various shows. Every time No Doubt would play up in the Bay Area, me and him would hang out. And, I hadn't really met too many, well, I hadn't really met any Black people that listen to music like that. And not that they have to be, but, just having that other connection. And so we spent some time. I remember we talked on the phone a lot. We just talked about music and bands and stuff. And, we were both into David Bowie, and we were both into, Radiohead, and, he liked Smashing Pumpkins, and there were a lot of bands we liked in common. And it was just like, we should start a band. So we did. And I wanted to do something different than No Doubt. I didn't want to come across trying to jump on that train. And I knew that even if I had tried, it probably would not have been, it wouldn't have been nearly as successful. And so I just wanted to stand out and do something different and unexpected. And I wanted to play guitar. I wanted to be at least out in the front doing something other than being trapped behind a drum set or a keyboard. And I wanted to be out front, so I played guitar.
Like the honesty.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
That must have been fun. Yeah.
So yeah, we had a good time.
Yeah.
And how long was Oslo around?
We started, we probably started in the early 2000s. Yeah, early 2000s. We started writing together. And another influence on Carrie and I both that we shared that was pretty heavy was the band Massive Attack.
Oh yeah.
And so yeah, me and him started writing music together. And like one of the early demos that we had come up with, it was very Massive Attack sounding kind of song. And we didn't have a singer. I didn't feel comfortable singing at the time. I mean, I sing backing vocals, but hearing my voice as a lead, I just kind of, it's a very personal thing to put yourself out like that. And I just didn't have I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm mentally or equipped to do that. So we were looking for another singer. And we had gone through a couple of friends, just sort of vibing and trying them out. And then Carrie had met this guy, Mattia, and he was a guitar player. And because I wanted to have a band, my vision was to have a band with two guitar players that also doubled up on keyboards, and maybe the bass player be the singer or one of the guitar players be the singer. So we could sort of switch around and go full electronic or full rock and just be able to marry those two styles. Because another influence, David Bowie had released the album Earthling in '97. And he was experimenting with drum and bass, which I was a big fan of jungle and drum and bass in the '90s. I was big into that. And I liked that marrying of the two, electronic and the rock. And so I wanted to have a band that would be able to do both of those kinds of styles of music, and just having the freedom to, in the spirit of even No Doubt's thing, where we're not playing just one style of music the entire time. Yeah. I wanted to be able to have something that was kind of like more fluid. So he was like, oh, I know this guitar player, Mattia. He's and he had just moved down to Southern California. And so he brought him in one day, and I met him, and so we most of our beginnings were sitting behind a computer writing and recording. We weren't really jamming in a room so much, which was it was a very unorthodox way to start a band. We and then one day Mattia, he had a couple of songs in his head, and he goes, yeah, I got a couple of ideas. And I was like, oh dude, let's lay them down. So we started he just played it on an acoustic guitar, and I kind of tapped out a tempo, and then we started building tracks, and then we got done building. I laid down some drum machine drums, and Carrie recorded the bass, and we did the whole laid down most of the general tracks, and I was like, yeah, you know, what are we gonna do about a vocalist? And he goes, I don't know if you want to hear it, but you know, I might have some ideas. And I was like, oh, really? You sing? He goes, yeah, a little bit. And I was like, all right, cool. And so the next day he came over and laid down some vocals, and his voice to me at that time had a tiny bit of a Billy Corgan kind of sound. And I was like, I can work with this. We'll work with you and whip you into shape, you know? So like he became the singer.
Okay.
And then we, you know, we just kind of went from there. And by the time No Doubt was done touring for Rocksteady, I remember we were sitting around, we were in Long Beach playing, we played a show in Long Beach, and we were sitting in the dressing room, and I think it might have been after sound check, and we were just all hanging out. And so, and the tour was kind of coming to a close. And so, you know, I think Tony or somebody was like, so what do we do now? Like, we're almost done with this. You know, we had huge success on Tragic Kingdom. Return of Saturn didn't do so well commercially. And now we kind of redeemed ourselves with Rocksteady. So, you know, should we take a break? Like, you know, make another record? Like, you know, the forum was open, and, you know, and so, you know, and then there was kind of silence, and I don't know. And then, you know, and I'll say this, you know, the thought of Gwen doing a solo record was always like, you know, I mean, it was obvious, like, how can you not do that if you're her, you know? And I mean, I remember people talking about that, like, not long after I had gotten in the band. Right. You know, and so it was like, yeah, of course you're going to make a solo record.
People, band members or
fans?
What's that?
Band members were saying that, or?
Oh yeah, it was band. Yeah, totally. Yeah, band and everyone around us. It was like, yeah, I mean, of course she's going to make a solo record at some point. I mean, that's what they all do, you know?
Right.
So, and then I don't remember who it was, but I think, you know, Tony may have even said, like, you know, Gwen, do you want to maybe do your solo record or something? And she was like, actually, I was actually having a meeting with Jimmy Iovine, and that topic came up, and yeah, you know, I think you should totally do it now. I mean, we just did this and did that, and I think it would be a perfect time for you to do that. And so that kind of, you know, and then so that's at that point I was like, I went to Carrie Mattia. I was like, guys, we're going to be on a little bit of a break, so we should strike it while it's hot. We got the time, so let's do this. And at that point,
there was no hostility or animosity. It was done in a friendly way.
Oh, no. In fact, Tony helped write some of the songs on that album,
right?
And I played on some of that, and then I went on tour with her and stuff. So yeah.
So speaking of Gwen, speaking of the tour, outside of the obvious, with the rest of the members of No Doubt, outside of Steven not being on tour, but what are the other differences with touring with Gwen compared to No Doubt?
Oh, in terms, well, there's a lot of differences.
Yeah. Maybe just touch on some.
You know, well, goodness, where do I start? I mean, musically speaking, I mean, it's very different, you know. And it is intended to be different. You know, it's not, no one's trying to, you know, it was intended for this to be this and that to be that. Right. Not necessarily trying to cross the lines. So the first band that Gwen had, we had David Bowie's drummer, Zach Alford. He was on drums, and his bass player, David Bowie's bass player, Gail Ann Dorsey, she was on bass and singing backing vocals. And so that already just added its own kind of vibe, and it was a great band. You know, Warren Fitzgerald from the Vandals, he was on guitar. You know, you wouldn't think, you know, somebody from a band like that, but yeah, he can get funky. Yeah. And yeah, we had a great time. And then Chris Pooley was on keys, and yeah, it was a fun band. We had a great time. That band, like, we played a lot of poker. Warren taught us all how to play poker, and we played poker every day. Yeah, we played Texas Hold'em all the time. So we kind of had our own thing, and it was like a cool vibe. And you know, Gwen, you know, she would, you know, mostly hide in her dressing room and get herself into her, you know, show mode, and get herself ready, get glammed up and hang out, take a nap, do her thing. And you know, I don't ever really bother her and go invade her space or whatever. I mean, I know I could walk in there at any point, but I mean, you know, I just kind of even on No Doubt tours and stuff, I mean, if I have something I need to talk to her about, then I'll go, you know, go in and say what up. But like, you know, usually, you know, I know that, you know, being a singer, and especially, you know, as animated and as physical as the show gets, you know, you need some space and time and whatnot. And so, you know, and when we would get together for No Doubt shows, you know, the last half hour, 45 minutes, the stereo would get turned up, and we'd be playing, you know, tonight it would be Fishbone. You know, we'd be in there like getting hyped up, having a couple of drinks. But tomorrow night it's going to be, you know, Bob Marley live at the Roxy, right. You know, and then the following night it's going to be the Clash. Yeah, we would have some hype music, you know, and then another night it's of course the Specials. You know, there was all those recurring, you know, bands we would throw out, and then we had a huge dance hall phase. During the Rocksteady era, we were listening to a lot of dance hall. Yeah, so we had our hype thing, and we'd get into our show mode and have a good time and stuff. And Gwen would come in, you know, the last 15-20 minutes of that, and she'd get into it with us and stuff. And you know, it was always a good time, you know. So yeah, as far as that stuff goes, yeah, they were just like two different bands basically. Yeah, just two different bands.
I really love seeing you guys. I mentioned to you off the air, but I got to see you and Gwen and the band perform at BST Hyde Park this last summer.
Oh, yeah, that was fun.
On the Pink, those two nights, and it was incredible. And what you and Steven add to it is also magical, just visually and obviously music wise. And I love the black and white two-tone feel and the whole ska.
Yes, sir.
And is that why you're wearing black and white too?
Yeah, maybe. And really excited to see you with Gwen on a show that you can do double duty coming up at Cali Vibes Fest with another group that Junior's going to ask you about with Sublime with Rome.
Yes.
Yes, sir. So taking it back to 2017, right? When you started touring with them, you also with them.
So how did that come back around?
Oh yeah, so so their manager, he contacted me again, and I think I may have been doing stuff with No Doubt at the time, or there was some No Doubt stuff happening. He contacted me again. I don't remember what year it was, and I was like, "Oh," he goes, how's your schedule looking like here?" And I was like, "Oh man, I got too much stuff going on." He goes, "All right," and then it was a pretty short conversation. I was like, "Well, just thanks for reaching out. I appreciate you, you know, blah blah blah." And then I went on tour with Tegan and Sarah in 2016 and 17. And while I was out with them, it just miraculously happened where their manager calls me again, and he says, his name is Cheese.
Yeah.
And Cheese calls me again, and he goes, "All right, Gabe, we got a tour with The Offspring, and it starts here and it ends here. What's your schedule like?" And I look at my schedule and I go, "Dude, you're not going to believe this, but I just happen to be free. 2 days after that, I'm going back out on tour with Tegan and Sarah, but I will be free." He goes, "Lock it in. Let's do it." And I was like, "All right." So I showed up and did 2 rehearsals with them. And so I knew that part of the assignment was going to be to nail the solo in the song Wrong Way.
Oh, sure.
It's an iconic trombone solo. And I can't remember the gentleman's name right now. Gosh, it's on the tip of my tongue. He's an Austin cat. And he literally just came in off the street, walked in and like did that thing. And I heard later on the producer, Paul Leary, he was telling me, he's like, yeah, he was a friend of his and he was a jazz trombone player. And he walked in, heard the track a couple of times, and then they got a sound up and he just played it like in 1 or 2 takes. And they were like, okay, done. And he was pretty much probably in and out of there in like half an hour, 45 minutes or something. And I heard that when we first got a copy of that album, and I listened to that and I was like, whoa, that is a sick solo. So I knew that was part of what I came there to do, was that. And so so I you know, gotten that under my fingers. So I came in for their first day of rehearsal, and then they were like, so anywhere you want to start? I'm like, we can just run down the set list you have here and, you know, see how that goes. And so I came in, had my sounds all programmed and had my thing all set up, and, you know, and then Wrong Way was like, you know, 3rd or 4th song in, and I was like, all right, here we go. And it's not that it's a difficult solo to play, but it is not an easy one to nail perfectly every time. And I want it to be just perfect. And so I came in and played it, and then Rome and everybody, I think they just like stopped and they were like, finally we found somebody who could play the song.
Wow. Nice.
I think they've been through a few other cats. Chris Dowd came in. Eric's friends with Chris, and Chris is an interesting cat because, you know, he's the kind of guy who plays it different every time. And so you know, me and him were talking. He's like, yeah, man, I'm not going to do the same thing twice, you know, which is what makes him so special, you know. But for me, having, you know, had my educational background and whatnot, and I knew like, okay, there's things you got to do, and there's other things when you get freedom, that's when you get the freedom to do this. But there's other things you're like, okay, you know, I knew what I needed to do, and no one had to tell me that. I was like, I know what I got to do.
Yep.
So so yeah, we did one tour with the Offspring, which interestingly enough, you know, No Doubt played with Offspring and Sublime. We did shows together.
Yes.
And so that tour was kind of a strange feeling for me, because I was just finding myself looking around going, where's Tony? Where's Gwen? Where's Steve? Where's Tom? Where's Adrian? Like, they should all be here right now. We should all be on this tour right now.
Yeah.
But I had a great time with them, and we vibed really well together. And, you know, it was the band, they had felt that the band felt more complete with me there filling in some of the gaps. You know, Sublime isn't really known for having a lot of keyboards, but, you know, when you listen to Bad Fish and you listen to some of these other songs, you're like, oh yeah, there's some stuff in there that like it does fill the gaps in. And so yeah, it's been a really, really fun journey playing with them, and I really enjoy jamming with Rome. He's an interesting cat because for me, like, I've never worked with a vocalist who likes to freestyle.
Okay.
And I'm not going to say he's like the best freestyle in the world, but he's really, really good at just throwing it down. And so sometimes we'll go through the set and we may skip over a song unintentionally. He might like look at the set list and ignore the one that we were supposed to play and go to the one after that. And then we'll come off stage and our road manager will be like, oh, you guys skipped a song. And so if you want, we'll come off before the encore. We were like, you guys can add another song in the encore. You can throw that back in, or we can do something else, you know, whatever you want to do. And Rome would be like, you know what? Let's just like jam. Let's just do something in like A minor or something. And then he'll be like, Eric, why don't you just do a bass line or something? And be like, all right. So we'll go back on stage and Eric will just come in with bass line. And then we would jam for like 3 or 4 minutes, you know, and just off the tracks. And I'm like, wow, I'm in the world of playing live shows in today's world, because I'll say this right now, pretty much most bands use a backing track, especially if you're in the pop rock world, maybe not so much in the reggae ska world, but in the pop and rock world, yeah, most everyone's using tracks. And it might just be a shaker, or it might be some sequenced keyboards, or it could be an extra guitar, or there's only one the somebody can only sing certain background vocals, or there might be some extra stuff in there that just makes it sound more like the record. And so, but when you play like that, you're stuck. You can't waver from that. You have to stay on there.
Right.
Playing like this and being off of, there's no click, there's no thing keeping you in time, there's nothing going on, and we're just feeling off of each other. And I'm like, man, I haven't done this in so long. And it was, for me, it was a breath of fresh air, just to be able to play. And so we started experimenting with that a little bit more. And sometimes Rome will he'll come in too early, or he might forget his lyrics on one part of the song and just start freestyling over it. And then I can tell he's going to continue to go. I'm like, oh, we're in the bridge, but we're supposed to be in the last chorus, but we're just going to keep going. All right, cool. We're off the thing. And I'm, listening to him, and I'm waiting for him to figure out when we're going to come back in, and we're playing off each other. And there's a little bit of this danger where you're like, what are we going to do? And then we'd all land and find each other and find the song and get back into it. And it's like, oh man, I'm like, dude, it's a lot of fun. And
Professionals, eh?
Yeah, exactly. It's and I will also say this in the spirit of the band Sublime, we hardly ever rehearse. And why is that?
Yeah.
I think getting all of us together to rehearse was always kind of a struggle. So if we ever wanted to learn a new song or work on something, we would usually do it at sound check. And so when I got in the band, I did those 2 rehearsals. I did the tour. We did the tour of The Offspring, and that tour finished at the sort of late fall. And then we didn't have another show until February or March or something in Tokyo, in Japan. We didn't rehearse once. We went straight into that show cold. And I was like, are we really doing this? Like, okay. And I was nervous. I was trying to remember everything. And so I was like, wow, we don't like, how come we didn't rehearse? And the drummer, Carlos at the time, he was like, dude, I did 2 days of rehearsal before I got it. He came in earlier that same year that I started playing with him. And he goes, I did those 2 rehearsals when I came in, and I did the other 2 with you. And those are the only 2 rehearsals I've done. But I look back on the original Sublime, and they were very inconsistent. Like some shows were really good and some shows were not so good. And so, yes, we kind of retained a little bit of that inconsistency and that little bit of danger, if you will. And I felt we were all more on the edge. We were on our toes of trying to be good, as opposed to just getting bored and going, yeah, I know these parts like the back of my hand. You were always going, okay, I remember this. Yes, okay, cool. How we're doing this. Uh-oh, Rome got off. Okay, we got to fix this.
I kept you on your toes.
That certainly would work with James Brown and Bob Marley.
Not at all.
So Gabe, as we reach our destination, anything that you're working on that we've not touched on that you want to talk about? Any closing thoughts?
I have been working on a project on an album of my own in here.
Nice.
For an extremely long amount of time. I'm kind of I've been thinking about something that will represent me and my different places that I've been, and I finally have some ideas that are becoming solidified. So no notes have been laid down yet. It's all in here right now, but I have a project I'm gonna I'm going to be working on.
We look forward to hearing
And
yeah,
you're
and seeing that.
I know you have a couple of projects coming up. You're still busy outside of these projects like Cali Vibes Fest,
Yeah.
which exactly a week and couple of days.
We're gonna
Yes.
see you on Saturday, February
Huh?
17th down there. Yeah, at Cali Vibes.
In addition,
Yeah, Cali Vibes.
other projects, or you taking a break now?
No, I'm gonna be touring with Sublime with Rome, most likely until the end of the year, and Rome is gonna be going solo.
Okay,
he's
so the
working
band
on
is
some
going to
new stuff.
continue without him.
No.
He's gonna continue on his own. And he's about to release a single pretty soon, and yeah, he's gonna do some stuff on his own, and I enjoy working with him. So my plan for now is to stay with him, and I still, of course, still work with Gwen.
Oh, you have that. You have that option. What a lucky
That's
guy.
great.
Wow,
Yeah.
some guys have all the luck. Wonderful. But no, I mean, let's face it. You know, you are good.
It's a testament to your skills, but also
There you go,
you're
right.
you're easy to work with, nice guy, and
I try to be, you know, I see some people who are not so easy to work with, and I don't ever want to be that guy.
I'm with you. I'm with you. It's too short for that.
Yes. Well,
But Gabe, congrats too on all the success.
Thank you.
Really, it's always wonderful seeing you on stage, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah.
living as a musician is not always an easy task.
Yeah.
It is not always an easy task, and I will say this, for me, being a multi-instrumentalist, you know, most bands, they'll be looking for a guitar player or a drummer, and those parts, those components of a band can be relatively easy to swap out. You got, you know, one guy who's, you know, oh, I can't do this, or, you know, he broke his arm, or, you know, something happened. You know, you can swap out that person that does that one thing. But there's not very many of us. Chris Dowd plays keys and trombone, and there's a couple other guys out there who do that. Oh man, I keep having so many brain farts right now. And his name's on the tip of my tongue too, from the Interrupters. And not Andy. Oh man, but he plays keys and trombone with the Interrupters. And
Not one of the brothers, but
no, not one of the brothers. Oh my
And
God,
very, very efficient.
what's that?
Top of the line, very efficient.
Yes.
and we'll see them. So we'll see who you're talking about at
That's
Cali Vibes.
Cali
too.
Vibes. Yeah, we got.
Yeah, exactly. They're gonna be there too. I'm gonna go say hi to those guys. I love that band. Those guys are great.
They are.
And another band that I like that's newer and more recent are the Skints.
Yes, out of the UK.
You know, yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
Love that band.
Uh,
Love that band.
yes.
Yeah, those guys are awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes.
Mm.
Well, Gabe, we just about reach our destination. I want to thank you. You just said that, right?
Yeah. No, we appreciate you taking us through your
Yes, man.
in the highlight.
Thanks so much for having me.
And what an amazing career you're making all of us jealous.
Bring back more music in the
Yes,
schools.
right.
Oh my God, that is mandatory. More than sports. No offensive to any sports fans out there, but you know, each team has so many spaces on it, but there's always room for another band or another artist or somebody. And it also gives kids things to do with their brains instead of just, you know, sitting behind a computer or whatever. You know?
I'm gonna leave us with this, since we talked about Rico earlier. When we were doing this show, the junior pleasure to work on at the El Rey Theater in 2005, Rico was not bringing his trombone, so I said I'm gonna go out and buy one. I've always wanted to play the trombone, my favorite instrument.
Yeah.
I went out and bought one. He brought his mouthpiece. He played it at the show.
Okay.
And it sat in my apartment. I picked it up a couple times. I never learned how to play it.
Okay.
I regret that. Fast forward, a friend of ours, Jason Lawless, who unfortunately has passed, was putting together some instruments to send to Alpha Boys School in Jamaica. where,
Wonderful choice.
where coincidentally Rico got his start. So I donated the trombone that I bought for Rico, and it went to Alpha.
Good man.
Well, when you're done. So here's my story now. So Rico at the El Rey, and he was upstairs just
I'm getting
before.
some weird flash flood warning alert.
Wow.
Oh,
All
yes.
right. So let's bring this conclusion.
There was a bunch of floods.
Yeah. And so he was upstairs, and people were in the dressing room, and he was very restless. He said,
Okay.
I need somebody, I need to go practice. That's what I mean, practice. Well, so what? Yeah,
That's how it is.
yeah, practice.
That's
But
how it is.
he's upstairs, he's bored. I gotta go practice.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
just wanted to encourage musicians, come to
Totally.
Rico is great to practice.
Indeed.
Yes, indeed.
Indeed. Yeah.
Gabe, once again, thanks, not to be repetitious. Thanks to everyone for the ongoing support. Please subscribe to this podcast series and our YouTube channel. Follow us on History of LA Instagram, Ska on Instagram, and join me.
Follow this gentleman at Junor
Yes,
Francis.
indeed. Mhm.
Yes, sir.
This series is produced by Rockery Radio, of course. Rockery _ Eric Kohler is the head man.
And
He's the producer of this one too.
and please get out and support live music. Be well, Gabe. We'll see you down in Long Beach at Cali Vibes. Junor, thank you as always.
I'm going.
You're going. And thank you to everyone for all the support, whether you listen or watch us.
Yes.
Until next time, Gabe, we'll see you. Take care, everyone.
I'll see you guys soon. Thank you guys so much for having me again.
Yes,
For
right.
sure. Be well,
Definitely.
everyone. All
Yes,
right.
So see you next weekend.
All right. Take
See you
care.
next weekend.
Bye-bye now.
Absolutely.
Take care, gentlemen.
All righty.